Right. Welcome back to Astrology Alert. And as has been the case before, we'll focus on the current situation. I think especially matters related to the ex-president, because that seems to be swirling, in the last few weeks, especially. But also, things like the perhaps the situation in Ukraine, etc., and whatever else is on your mind around this. So you were telling me that you have had some intuitions about Merrick Garland, and he's definitely linked to the Trump situation, I think. So interesting to hear about that.
Right. Yeah. I had I'm Kim, by the way. Kim from INTUITIView.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this is Kim from INTUITIVEW. Yes. My apologies.
No problem. No, I just thought people probably think, who are you? Why are you here? So when I was doing my live recently, I got this hit that I had never gotten before. And it was that Merrick Garland, the reason that he pushed the Trump stuff onto Jack Smith was because Merrick Garland is going to go after the lawmakers. He's going to go after Marjorie Taylor Greene, Johnson, all of those people that were involved in the planning of everything. And what I was getting was that, and if this is right, then we have to see Merrick Garland as kind of a genius because right now Trump is solely focused on Bragg and Jack Smith, and nobody is looking at Merrick Garland. And so Merrick Garland is quietly just working away and I think the lawmakers think that's it, we got away with it, or it's over. But you have to remember that he has their phone records, he has their emails. And I remembered too that a couple of years ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, they took John Eastman's phone. Do you remember when they confiscated his phone in the parking lot?
I do.
And he was in all of these meetings with all of these people. So when I thought about it, I was like, that makes sense. But I'd never gotten that hit before. That's why he pushed the stuff of, because everyone thinks, well, he doesn't have time or he's too scared. No, he's going to bring charges against the lawmakers, and Jack Smith is going to take care of Trump. What do you think about that?
What I think about that is that's wonderful to hear. May it be so. And the thing is, I've been wondering what kind of a brick wall is Marjorie Taylor Greene going to run into pretty soon. So now this is where if it's that, perfect, because by April, May, her chart is getting a lot of Saturn action, and people that are this undisciplined and this, twisted do really poorly with Saturn, really poorly. Not to mention that she is known to have been involved in the insurrection. She was looking for pardons. And so, these people are such geniuses. They seem to think, well, Trump is the top level of this, where he thinks because he never sends emails or texts, but he leaves trails everywhere.
Right.
In an era where everything is on camera somewhere or recorded somewhere, this is not good. That's now you're hearing courts like I heard that in Georgia, the prosecutor kept presenting videos to counter people's Fifth Amendment. I'm going to plead the Fifth, and they would show, well, you said this somewhere else. Here you are on camera. So, yeah, that fits perfect. Well, I'm hoping. Let's just say, because
me too.
It's in the spring already. Marjorie Taylor Greene has a huge problem, but it extends all through until next year because the way planets move, you get retrograde periods, and so the Saturn is kind of encircling her sun for close to a year. But it starts soon, so that would be great actually for Merrick Garland and for the country. I think, yeah, it would fit perfectly.
And the thing is that we all know too that all of these people they're bullies. And we know that bullies are cowards deep down. They're afraid. And I really do think that when Merrick Garland starts actually charging people and telling people they're going to get charged, I think they will turn on each other. They will throw each other under the bus. They'll throw Trump under the bus. They will make deals. I think that it will be the craziest thing we've ever seen.
Well, I mean, at least it'll be entertaining. It's just that how do you see though so are you saying that simultaneous with this, the effectiveness of this, the House Republicans, they're trying to interfere with everything and overreach in their monitoring and so forth. Do you see that as a result of that lessening, like their power, or how do you see it? Because I mean, they're trying really hard to defend Trump and claim that it's all weaponization of government.
Well, I think that it's going to be interesting, right? Because this is territory we've never crossed before.
Sure.
We've never done this before. And so as things come out, people may demand that they step down. The person I think that's going to look really, really bad in all of this is Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah,
because he is the one who is trying to protect all these people just so he can be speaker. And as things come out and as they release texts, and as just like in the Fox case, how they've released these texts and release emails, when the public starts to hear these things, I really think there's going to be a groundswell that's kind of wanting these people to get out. And the difference, I think, between Merrick Garland and Jack Smith is, I really think Jack Smith is more risk averse, or he's less risk averse than Merrick Garland. I think Merrick Garland is not going to go to court unless he is sure. And as you've seen, like, they've won every case against the Oath Keepers and and so, but I think Jack Smith, if he's 90% there, I feel like he'll go with it, because to me, it's kind of like, if I just have to try, because this is so egregious, I just have to try. And I think that's why he works in places like The Hague and things like that, because he will just go for it if he feels like it warrants going for. But the more that I like I said, I'd never gotten that hit before, and I thought, I wonder if I got that because we're close to it. I also felt like Merrick Garland didn't think he could get to Trump before the election. And so I feel like that's why he handed everything off to Jack Smith. I really think he wants to try and stop him from going forward as a nominee, because that's ridiculous, right? This guy tried to overthrow the government, and he's running for president. It is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's true. So is it safe to conclude then, from your vantage point, that the nominee is unlikely to be Trump and it's more likely to be someone else? And so this is where you get into the potential for DeSantis, even though he's not looking particularly great these days either. But is that the logic, or is it something entirely different?
Yeah, even a couple of years ago, I never felt like it was going to be Trump or DeSantis. I felt it was the energy of somebody who was more like Pence. I don't think it is Pence, but it's somebody more like kind of Christian, kind of boring, kind of, that kind of person, like a Pompeo or somebody like that. The energy did not feel like that kind of bombastic, that obnoxious. They didn't have that energy, and I couldn't put my finger on who it is, but I just felt like they felt a little bit more like Pence, a little more controlled, a little more dialed down, more, like I said, more Christian. They felt like they were kind of involved in the Christian stuff. But that's more what they felt like. They didn't feel like a Trump or DeSantis.
Interesting.
What did you have you ever looked at DeSantis's chart?
Well, I don't have a birth time for the Santas. Just on the day, the way you would expect it to go is that he does have a quite a helpful good year starting in May till the following May. His problem is
Mhm.
that by the time you get into the early summer, like June really of 2024, the actual election year, it's not a good situation. Those are not winning angles going into the election, which is what you need, when people actually go to vote.
Right.
So from that perspective, you could say maybe he does win the nomination, but then I could see where he wouldn't too, because the thing about it is there's a good cycle coming up now, but he's doing fairly well in Florida. He's getting things done there, and the overarching aspect is the Saturn. It's on the other side. Like Saturn, he's a Virgo, and Saturn is in Pisces, and that's not usually a good angle to run on because
Mhm.
you get too much opposition. So I could see your perspective as well, where he wouldn't be the one either, and I would be beyond amazed if Trump was able to pull this off because he just has everything landing on him now. And
Right.
I mean, you could say it's the astrology, but you can just say it's common sense. When you've got four different, five more, probably people say four or five. I think there are more because they forget about the E. Jean Carroll case that is swirling in the background as well. And it seems like judges are moving them along. They're not saying, "Oh, this is wrong," and we'll end it. They're not ending them. So you kind of think it's probably going to get worse pretty soon, and certainly as we go into the later stages of the year and into next year. And I think it makes sense what you say exactly that, people think, what's Merrick Garland doing? I mean, if you're thinking about it, he probably is too, and he's probably thinking, this is nuts. How can we let a person like this get anywhere near the White
Right.
House again? He's a total thug. So yeah,
Right.
makes sense.
Right. And I also, I also always remember that Merrick Garland did the McVeigh case, the Timothy McVeigh. And I think he has a real problem with um
With criminals.
terrorists, yeah, criminals. He does have a problem with criminals, but kind of terrorist actions against the United States. Um, I feel like that's a sore. I mean, all of us don't like that, but I kind of feel like he's particularly um, it scares or not scares him. It bothers him in particular because it 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 tries to make us fearful and tries to um, kind of curtail our freedom. When you're scared, you start making laws that kind of take away your freedoms, like we did after 9/11. And I think he has a real issue with that. And I feel like he's not going to kind of let it go. And so I do feel like these people, he sees them as kind of homegrown terrorists. And he doesn't want to be held hostage by these people. So, um, but it's funny because I've always just wondered about what is he doing? Why is he not doing it? It just seems like what is he doing? What is he what is he doing? But I really think it was just too much to do before the election. So I feel like he handed off. And it also, like I said, shifted Trump's focus, his big, loud megaphone onto Jack Smith and off of Merrick Garland. So
It
if
makes
he
sense.
did, if that's what it is, he's a genius.
Well, it makes sense though. I mean, yeah,
Right.
it fits the pattern. But I mean, Merrick Garland again, a chart with no time, but he's a Scorpio. I mean, people are talking about him being soft. I don't know. Scorpios, they're quiet about what they're doing, but don't cross them
You're
because
right.
it's not a good idea. That's not at all a soft sign. It's just that in his demeanor, he may be that way. He's not bombastic, but the idea that he's not doing anything, I think, is totally incorrect. And he's had a tough time of it because he came in following someone like Bill Barr, who was corrupting everything, and he wanted to establish a sense of fairness, of bipartisanship, sort of at least. And so that's why I think he was never going to, right after the inauguration, jump on Trump. that would have really inflamed things. You know, they could have pointed to that as, see, we told you this is what's going to happen. So instead, he waited for that January 6th committee to gather a lot of evidence. It gave him cover. And probably that wasn't the best plan overall, but he was trying to balance things. That's the thing. He's a Scorpio with quite a bit of Libra. Libra always tries to, you know, balance things and make things equal and so forth. And it can lead to indecision. And that may not be the greatest thing. But the one thing I noticed about his Libra planets that is very curious is they're lined up to really hurt Trump. And that can't be good for Trump, right? So same with Alvin Bragg. It's why he's so fixated on Trump. And he's already hurt him with one case. And now he's following up on another. So I think the thing with these things, what drives people nuts is they expect the legal system to be, you know, quick, get it done. But it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. It takes quite a bit of time, you know.
It's so true. And I think people feel the urgency. They feel like these people are dangerous. And so I think they're just really just like, get them, you know, do something, you know, because it's that you feel that urgency. But you're right. It moves so slowly. And yeah, absolutely.
I mean, whenever a person has the resources to hire lawyers, even if they are not great, because we've seen some Trump lawyers that you feel like you're watching a really, you know, bad B movie of, you know, how terrible they are. But if you can hire lawyers are great at stalling, delaying, filing motions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Trump's game. He's been doing this his whole life. You know, he's sued something like thousands of times. I mean, ridiculous. That's what he does. He manipulates the law. So you have to expect that, you know, things will move slowly. Although it's kind of telling. I don't know if you noticed that thing that he did where did I see somewhere that he didn't, this thing with Corcoran, where he's being, basically judges from Jack Smith's pressure are saying, no, you have no executive privilege here because you were committing a crime with your client. And notice he didn't push that up to the Supreme Court to appeal it because he's scared that they'll present the evidence they have and make him look even worse. So he knows what's going on, but Trump does. But if he can, he will always try to delay. That's a legal tactic. And then on the political level, he just throws as much mud and confusion and makes noise. But you can tell he's really upset because he's everything he's writing is in all caps.
Right.
Don't give it away or anything.
That's his panic button, the all caps.
It's such a remarkable time when you see that these protesters that he wants. I don't know if you saw that thing with Jordan Klepper where he found the one protester in New York, and this guy is covered, you know, from head to toe. You can only see his eyes because now they're scared that the law enforcement will see them on video and then charge them. So they say, oh, it's a deep state trap. You know, I don't want to do it. Well, what deep state? It's called law enforcement. You're not supposed to break laws. So yeah, don't go on camera breaking laws because you'll probably end up in jail. So that also doesn't help because they now realize, so we're going to protest for this guy. We're the ones that are doing jail time. And nothing seems to be happening to him yet. So yeah, the whole plan is very dicey.
And that reminds me of something else that I saw that I wanted to ask you about, a little bit, kind of shifting to Putin a little bit, because these calls for like Trump being like, you know, fight to the death and civil war and stuff like that, trying to get people to be violent, basically. I did see Putin and Russia on social media pushing that as well. And so I feel like that kind of rhetoric is going to start like kind of getting worse. I still didn't see a lot of, I saw kind of pockets of little things happen, skirmishes, like kind of happening around different parts of the country. But I didn't see anything that looked like January 6th or anything like that. But do you know what's happening with Putin right now? It seems like he'd have his hands full and he wouldn't be bothering with us, but I feel like Trump's his last shot. I mean, that's it. If Trump doesn't get in, or if somebody in his pocket doesn't get in, he's done. And I always got he's done anyway. But I feel like he may just start throwing everything into kind of trying to get Trump off or whatever, or trying to get people riled up against each other and that kind of thing, like they did in the 2016 election. So what do you get with Putin?
You know, the only thing with Putin that I'm focused on is that he is in long-term, really maladjusted cycles. So this makes it really hard to succeed. And they also have these cycles that he's in have this connection to health breakdown. And so if those rumors are true at all, he's got a big problem, because it could completely take him out. But whether or not that's true, it's not well set up for him to succeed at anything, literally. And yes, of course, this is the only play they have to create discord. It's just that these people are all on the wrong side of the numbers. When you're seeing polling that is 60-40, what good is it to be on the side of the 40? Yeah, okay, you'll make a lot of noise and it'll seem like it's super important, but you're being opposed all the time. And so when you then go to vote, and when you're doing something important, you don't win. And then all you can say is that you're the victim of something. I just don't see this succeeding. I do think, though, in the near term, especially for the next 2-3 months, if anything, yes, Putin is likely to get more aggressive, do more aggressive things, as you say, on social media and with the war in Ukraine, because he's in this cycle of overexpanding something, but then it starts to fade. It doesn't work as well. And it's just that, again, wars, like politics, they take time. People are always thinking it should just end immediately. There's no way. It's going to take longer, for it to.
Right. And I know that a lot of people, commentators, are saying that Putin is trying to just outlast the time, because he thinks if Republicans get in charge again, they'll stop helping Ukraine. Sure. And so he thinks if he can just hang on. But the moment when they were lining up those tanks, I said, I know other readers said too, that if he goes in, he's done, he's finished. The world would not stand for it.
I totally, that's my sense too as well. I mean, it would not, that chart, no astrology would say, yeah, go ahead, invade, it'll work out.
Yeah.
No. Now, 2016, I've said this many times, if he does it in 2016, I think he would own Ukraine now. It would be his, because Trump would have helped him. Trump is constantly, I remember that Trump, when he first did it, he said, oh, this is brilliant. Then he backtracked briefly when he realized how bad it looked, but he's back to that again. They're all on this train that says we shouldn't be so mad about Putin. It's a territorial dispute, according to Trump.
Right.
And I think more of America, much more of America, doesn't believe that. And once again, you're on the wrong side of the numbers. It's like even things like when you see a poll where all they do is attack on everything is woke. Well, woke has a 56% approval. So where are you going with that? This means that can be used against you, because you can define it as something reasonably good, even if it has some problems. So they seem to be getting on the minority side of everything, and that's not a good plan. It just isn't, for winning.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, Andre, have you ever done a chart on Alexei Navalny?
I did do a day chart, but he's another person with no time available, so it gets more speculative. But it did look bad enough that it kind of reflects the jam that he's in, and I don't get anything beyond that. He's more of a figurehead for the resistance to Putin.
Right.
Do you see anything around him, for example, being important in Putin's demise, or some kind of resurgence, or something like that? I didn't get that sense.
I always have this image of him for some reason, and a lot of times my guides will have one image they'll repeat and repeat and repeat. And a lot of times it's just to tell me, like, this is the track we're on, this is the track we're on. And the one image they show me of Navalny is him standing on a car. And I just feel like there are just tons of people around him. And I feel like they have opened the prisons and people are released. And I have this image of him standing on a car and kind of talking to all the people. And I still get that image. And I know that if something cannot be changed, I don't see it. Usually if it can be changed by free will, if it can be altered, I'll see it. And that tells us what we can change. Also, if we don't like what's coming or whatever, we can, work to put our energy out there, or pray, or do whatever we can to make it go another way. But that has been a consistent image for a couple of years. And but I thought, if the people were to, I've always felt like Putin's going to overstep. There's something he's going to do that just kind of blows this up. And I did wonder if they might do some kind of draft where they are just taking people and making them go. I mean, they're kind of there already, but I just felt like if it was something like that, the people probably would rise up and say, no, you're not taking any more of our kids. And if they did rise up, they would open the prisons, because in those prisons are not, there probably are some, real, criminals, but most of them are political prisoners. They're people that were protesting. They're their family members.
Right.
So that series of events, it makes sense to me, but it's the will of the people. It's their free will as a country to rise up against this jerk. He's so oppressive, and I think you can only do that to people so long. People's natural tendency is to want to be free, and I think you can only oppress people for so long. It can be, decades, but eventually they rise up because they want to be free. That's the natural state. That's our spirit, right? Our spirit. That's where we come from, is freedom, ultimate freedom. So that's ultimately going to be what's kind of what I call like spirit supported, And so, well, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the question is the timing, but back to when
Exactly.
you were saying about Pluto and Aquarius, that's one of the features of Pluto and Aquarius. But Pluto's going to be in Aquarius from now, sort of a little more next year, and fully in 2025. Then it doesn't get out of Aquarius till 2042. It's there a long time, right? And Pluto and Aquarius tends to be, you look back at previous cycles, it's when you get revolutions of the very nature you're bringing about, where people have been oppressed. Like you see this in Iran. Iran is a dangerous place because people are starting to get angry. It could happen in Russia, but in other places too. The only question is how quickly. And so if you go through the filter of Putin, he's already in a bad place, but the next Saturn sign, which isn't until 2025, 2026, that's even worse, because then it opposes his Libra planets. That would be like the end, almost always. So I would agree with you. It's just how long could it be, right? It could be a while.
Right.
And because for what you say to be true would mean that Putin would be removed and not replaced by another Putin. They would be replaced by some other way of thinking. Otherwise, the last thing Russia wants to do is get rid of Putin and then open the prisons. Like, they would have a total
right.
chaotic revolution in there, because it would be a change in perspective that is so big, which actually would be, I think, better for them. But the question is, when does that happen? When does this guy
Right.
get out so much that they maybe, I mean, for Russia, it would be best to realize we need to be part of the world, not be this, pariah with all these restrictions and having to be allied with China, whom they probably don't even like, because China's kind of on their doorstep too, and Russia is always suspicious of anything around the borders. So to me, it's a timing thing, right? Because
yes,
I can see that, but do you see that right away, or does it feel to you like
it doesn't feel like it's right away. It kind of feels like it's a little bit later. And I do wonder too if because I do feel like he has health issues for sure. But I thought as he gets sicker and sees his time shrinking, that he may do something that is kind of big, overstep in some way, be desperate, overstep in some way. So like a last shot kind of thing. And I just think it's going to be, it may start some upheaval in his own country. And you're right. I mean, we've seen the protests in Israel and protests in France and protests in Iran. And yeah, we've seen just a lot of just people activity. And
It's dicey.
yeah,
It's dicey because, and that is where the cycles, the one thing that is true is that the Pluto cycle, back to Pluto again, is on the other side of where it was when things got really dicey in the Second World War. But that was a struggle to contain that madness. The entire planet was at odds with itself. And really, it was the same thing. There were these people that wanted to be in control from the top down. Fascists, Mussolini, the Empire of the Rising Sun in Japan. Japan was invading everything in their region. There was Russia. Russia was sort of in the middle, but they became communist after. But they were, again, led by top down, and of course, Hitler and so forth. And now you're seeing similar problems. Democracies are not in a good place. Israel, that's a great example. Israel, Netanyahu is trying to do something that is pretty anti-democratic. And I'm not sure if he'll succeed, but thing with him, I would say with him, we're going to know for sure how things will go starting from June forward, because that backtrack of Pluto isn't good for him. And so I'm hoping that he'll be pushed back, because then it'll take longer for Israel to recover if he implements rules like he wants to implement. They're very Trumpy, what he's trying to do there.
Right.
Taking control, and
he's
another one that is up for judicial, charges, reviews, and he doesn't want that. So he's trying to pass laws to negate them, which, by the way, is what Trump would do if he got back in power. Guaranteed, he would try to take control of the Justice Department. So it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But I think overall, though, it's, again, subject to time. It takes a while, just like it took back in the 1940s. It was not an immediate thing, but it moved in the right direction, because I think overall, when you see Aquarius featured, Aquarius is a sign of the people. And even it has certain problems, like too much tilted toward corporations, for example, and we see that too. The power of Silicon Valley and that kind of thing, Google, etc. Even so, it's a sign of the people. It doesn't fit well with top-down rule, which is what people like Trump and Bolsonaro and now the Netanyahus of the world are trying to do this as well within democracies. Not so much in France, though. France, I think, is more that to be honest, they have a pretty generous system, and they 62, and now it's going to be 64. I mean,
right,
and realistic.
That it's not. I didn't think like it was. It's not a regime like Putin or anything like that. But it's just the people kind of speaking up. The people just saying like, "But this is what we want." Kind of matching their whoever is in charge. And what do you now? If I understand this correctly from watching your video about Pluto is not good for any dictatorship, right? Or any authoritarianism, right?
No, Pluto is good for that.
Pluto is good for that. Okay.
Pluto is good for that in the right location, in a location that suits it. So in the 1930s, Pluto was going through Cancer. That's the Cancer Capricorn polarity, and that's the more pure homeland and government signs. And so you get that impulse. The impulse is strengthened, much like from 2008 to 2025, Pluto's in Capricorn, same thing is happening. There was this build-up of this fascistic impulse. But now it's leaving. It's going to the next sign, like it did in the late 1930s. It exited Cancer, went into Leo. But now that one was resolved through a really brutal war. That's what we have to avoid this time around.
Right.
So if people are complaining that things are a little dicey is okay. What you don't want to see is, if you see actual shooting and killing and maiming, that's not good. And we're already seeing it in Ukraine, which is terrible, but you don't want this to break out into into a melee throughout the world, because that would be
Right.
really bad. And I think even if it did, it would end in the same place. It would be defeated. But we always want to avoid the bloodshed if possible, And
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never seen like a World War III, that kind of scenario. I've never seen that. And things can change, of course, things can change, but so far I've really not seen that. What did you get about Crimea? Because, or what have you heard, what do you feel about Crimea? Because I know a lot of readers have read on Crimea. Some people say Ukraine will take it back. Some people say with that Putin, that Russia will keep it. And it was interesting because I did a video on 10 years, the United States in 10 years. And I was, was it the United States? No, the world in 10 years. And one thing I got about Crimea was that it was its own thing. It was its own like little, it almost felt neutral. Kind of like Switzerland or something. It just felt like it was kind of its own thing. Have you felt one way or the other that it would go back to Ukraine or that it would stay with Russia? Have you had any feelings about Crimea?
That's one that I admit that I don't get clarity on that, because common sense would tell you that, or sort of expected political whatever, it would seem really, really hard for it to all go back completely to the Ukraine, because it would be such a humiliation for Russia.
Right.
So actually, that's a really novel explanation. I like what you just said. because
it was weird.
That
it was
that would
weird.
really fit. Like if you said something like, for example, if Russia is pushed back in most of it, and then Crimea maybe is shared or something, they share the whatever it is, that could be a pretty good compromise. But the idea that it goes completely back, I've never had
Right.
that, even though it's that sense that's what you want, because it seems like the fair thing and so forth. But it feels like a
Yeah,
bit of
I've not
a
had that
fight.
either. And just to clarify, it was I was looking at Ukraine in 5 years. That's what it was. Ukraine in
In
5 years. And
5 years.
that's what I was getting. It was just kind of its own little thing, kind of not really Russia's and not really it wasn't its own country. It just felt like an independent territory or something. It was interesting. Yeah, I don't
That would
know.
be that would be
So
good.
we'll see. But it was kind of a weird thing. So
Yeah, that would be good though. That would be a big improvement over the current the current situation. So yeah,
yeah. And have you gotten anything about the economy
the economy in the
in the
U.S.
United States?
Uh, uh, the economy to me is a bit jagged for a while because of the consequences of see, in astrology you see these patterns, like the biblical 7 years of expansion, 7 years of contraction. That's the Saturn Jupiter, the inevitable back and forth. Something grows too much, then it has to be pulled back, and it's very hard to get that balance. And the period when Trump was there, and then the way the pandemic came in and people needed help and so forth. So there was a lot of money in this system, very cheap money. Now we're having to go the other way for a while, and it's unrealistic to say it'll immediately go back to the way it was. No, it's going to take a
Right.
while for it to recover, probably at least a couple of years before it
Mhm.
settles out a little more. But it's not that bad too. I mean, when you look at the situation right now, at least employment is pretty strong,
Mhm.
and uh, it's not terrible from my vantage
Right.
point. I mean, think back to 2008. That was much worse. And the pullback we
Right.
had. So, but I would say at least 2 years where like a kind of treading water situation, rather than
Right. Kind of up
expanding.
and down.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I got as well. That it was kind of, it was a little bit, we'd have kind of ups and downs. It wouldn't, uh, but I kind of felt like it would be okay. It's not going to be horrible. Um, and no huge things like a complete crash or a complete, depression or a recession. It would just felt like it was kind of just teetering on the edge, and then kind of get straightened out. I have to admit, the economy is not my strongest thing to look at. I feel like that's one of my weaker areas. I don't know why, but it is. I think it depends on just what but every reader is different in what their strengths are. But I get the same thing. I get that it's just going to be a little bit wonky, and then it will kind of straighten out.
I mean, a lot of times with the economy, it is, I think, important to check the numbers, because the numbers tell you, like for instance, this thing that happened with the banks, you could see it coming because they were holding investments that had lost value because of the way the Fed, trying to control inflation, was raising interest rates, and that was hurting something they were doing it before, and then they didn't change quickly enough, and there are often reasons for that too, because they're going quarter to quarter. Whatever it is, you can kind of see it coming. Same in 2008, where there was all those bad mortgages. You could see it coming too. But it's remarkable how governments sometimes know this, and they, or governments, institutions, they won't act, and then it means you get a crisis afterwards. But yeah, I agree with you though. I don't see it either. I don't see the gloom and doom scenarios. No, I don't see it that way.
And so many of these things, it's just greed. What if you're a billionaire? Why do you need more money? What is the deal with that? I don't get that. It's like, wait, now we're going to have a bunch of trillionaires. It's like, what are you doing? It's almost like a sickness and illness. I don't know what it is, but it's the most bizarre thing. It's like, what do you need to buy that you need that much money? It doesn't resonate with me at all. I don't get it. I know power and greed, but it's still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, though, I mean, in a way, it's the power and greed, because if you have all that money, it's not so much. I mean, how much money do you need? You're right. What are you going to do? You're going to buy like what, islands, countries? It's crazy, but it's the idea that you have power and influence. So it's like the Koch brothers; they can get in there and flood the system with money and try to influence things. But it's all top down, because it means people like Elon Musk. He thinks he knows something that we should all do. No, actually, no thanks, because I look at what you do and what you say, it doesn't work for me. But it is that, and then because it's top down, immediately fits the fascist model, or the king model, and I don't see that working. I just don't. It's just that it takes a while to phase it out. But here's the thing: you look then for patterns within patterns. Would you say that your intuition, your sense of what you're picking up, would point to another Democratic administration in 2024? Is that reasonable to expect, or is it still to you at a big unknown?
Well, it certainly looks that way, because and I do feel that, but it does look that way because everything the Republicans are doing are so unpopolar.
Yeah.
Nobody likes Roe v. Wade, overturned. Exactly. Nobody likes guns being just, handed out to 18-year-olds. Nobody likes this stuff. And they keep doubling down. And I think that they really have a problem that they've set up for themselves, where they're scared of their own base, and they can't back up from anything. They can't apologize for anything. They can't back up from a position. So they're really in this catch-22 that they put themselves in, and I think something's going to have to come along and kind of bonk it on the head and kind of let the dominoes fall, because it really is like they're going to have to build this from the ground up, because they're just they put themselves in a box that's just not sustainable, because they keep losing. So if they keep just repeating the same thing over and over again, they keep doing that, and people don't like it. And like you said before, as long as they're in that minority, they're not going to win elections. They're going to try to steal them. They'll try to overturn votes and do things like that. But I just don't see it. I really do feel like the Democrats will be in again, because they're just more in line with the most of America, and we're a very moderate nation. We're not extreme. So I think either side, when you get into those extremes, people don't like it. It makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
And they're just too extreme right now.
Right, right, exactly. So then, in that sense, though, if you then step back and look at all of it as a kind of fated pattern that it would turn out this way, because, for example, they could have rejected Trump on the spot in early 2021 and probably would be in a better place now, but
Yeah.
they didn't. And so then, in a way, they're arranging this situation so that they're making it more likely that as we move into these upcoming 3, 4, 5 years, laws get passed to protect people rather than to take things away or to, give people freedoms, such as what they're trying to do with women. I think is insane. When you're, attacking women who are more than 50% of the electorate, that again is getting on the wrong side of the numbers. It's senseless. It means you'll get pushback. But they're making it more likely because if they were to get elected, they would keep it going, to please their base, and they would think that they're on the right track. But if they don't, then you increase the odds that things get passed, to then make things more democratic. And so that's to me how it fits into the entire pattern of, Pluto going into Aquarius and, the general movement of the planets toward more freedom, not toward less freedom. But again, it's not like you can say this is a matter of months. It takes a while. Like I remember saying this when Roe v. Wade was overturned. People were mad at me for saying it's going to be 2 to 5 years before you see this thing reversed, because people want it immediately, right? But it didn't, and some of that is a little puzzling because I thought even though the Democrats did well in the midterms, I think more could have voted. I always wonder why people don't vote more. The numbers drop a lot compared to the presidential, and don't they understand it's puzzling.
I don't either. I think because we just have so many distractions, maybe. I think, I do think COVID woke up a lot of people. I think all of a sudden they had a stake in what was going on. It was literally life or death, right? With what was going on with government. So I think that woke a lot of people up. But it's a matter of keeping them engaged. And I have to say, Trump does that because people can't stand him. And so as long as he's in the game, people are going to be motivated to vote and to make sure he's not anywhere near the White House again. But you're right. They could have been done with this guy several times. They just didn't do it, and that's, again, free will, right? We have free will, and they keep using their free will in a stupid way.
Yeah, no, that is one of the marks that is helpful in a way to protect democracy, is that the anti-democratic faction, formed by people like Trump, Kevin McCarthy, MTG, they're not very smart. These people are not, they claim to be visionary. They're not. They keep making the wrong choice. Why are you going to prisons and talking to these insurrectionists and saying that they're martyrs and saying that they're patriots? That's not a good political look. You can raise some money for your particular stash, but it's not a good overall plan. It's short-sighted, right? So not to mention that I agree with you, though I didn't think of it, that probably Garland, is telling his wife at home or something, I can't believe what she's doing. I'm going to make sure I stop her, because that's what the Attorney General is supposed to do,
Right.
And because you see the danger, of flaunting the law like that. 1,000 people are put in jail, but they're, it was carefully done. They would have due process, and evidence is presented, and then they get sentenced. It's not just arbitrary, like you just do it for no reason. So I think it's good in a way that the Republican side these days isn't very smart. Look at Jim Jordan. He's always threatening to do incredible things. He's, I'm going to bring in all kinds of witnesses, and witnesses? They aren't there. He had 3, and they were all conspiratorial.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, is that all of these committees have kind of backfired. Again, people they don't like that. They don't like just them doing nonsense. And I think people are catching on. And I think since the January 6th hearings, I think people are paying attention, and hopefully
Yeah.
they'll keep paying attention, because it's clear that they're just trying to keep their seats. I don't know how Kevin McCarthy thinks this is going to end well for him.
Well, it's not. No, it's
It's
not.
just not
No,
going
it's not.
to.
I
There's
mean,
no
think about it.
way.
I mean, Kevin McCarthy, his chart is probably the most emblematic of getting yourself in a jam. He's on a Saturn return in a really compromised spot, and Saturn returns. The precise point is 2 or 3 times over the course of a year, but that year becomes really problematic. And Saturn is a planet that you have to be disciplined, even when you're really upright, good citizen, and you are disciplined. Still isn't easy. It's a difficult planet. But when you're a borderline moron like he is, I'm sorry, I have to be totally honest about this, right? Because I honestly, I don't. He's just not that smart. He also makes up
Right.
words. That's another thing. These people, like you wonder, like, what school did you go to? I remember he said at one point that Hillary Clinton is untrustable, and I thought, but Kevin, that's not a word, and you're the speaker. So why do you say? And then Elise Stefanik said, "This is the epitomization of something," and I thought, that's not a word. Anyways, it's just remarkable that these people are there, but in a way, it's lucky too, because you know,
Right. If they were any smarter,
what
we,
if they
we
were
might be in
smart?
trouble.
What if they were smart? Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, and by the way, they're pretty divided too, because now the other interesting thing is that the McConnell faction is at odds with the McCarthy faction, and
Right.
that Trump hates that because the McConnell helps Biden too much, and and on and on and on. So, it's not a good thing when you've got a divided party. It's much tougher, right? But
Really hard.
like you said, the key thing is for people to stay engaged, and especially the Australian model: vote all the time, always, every
Exactly.
election, make your feelings known. And right now, there's zero reason to consider anyone in the Republican Party because of the way they're thinking. They're
Right.
thinking crazy, crazy
Exactly.
town. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, it's been great speaking with you, and I don't know if we've solved the world's problems, but
You
we've
too. Yeah,
covered a
I
lot of
think we've
ground.
solved everything.
We've
It's all fixed.
we've solved it all. I have a feeling though that we probably can meet again soon, because I think some things are going to start breaking
Mm,
as we move into the next couple of months, because there are people like McCarthy and MTG who have these strong pressures. The person that I'm wondering about any day now is George Santos, because he's got the Pluto there
right.
is not helpful to him in these next two
Hmm.
months. And you begin to wonder, if could he fall under the umbrella of Merrick Garland as well, seeing that he's breaking the law and that he needs to be brought to account. Does that feel like anything you would endorse, or is that a reach with
Yeah,
Santos?
absolutely. Absolutely. And he's got a lot of he just keeps, I mean, you open his closet and there's a million skeletons in there. I mean, he's got so many skeletons in his closet. And,
I know.
it's really, yeah, it's astounding. So yeah, I think he's definitely on borrowed time right now. Um, yeah, I think it's gonna be crazy. I really do. I think it's gonna be crazy. We think it's been crazy, and I think it's just gonna be stuff we've just never seen before.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing you can say about the U.S., that at least it's entertaining, even though it feels at times like you're watching a horror movie. But at least it's super interesting because of all these,
Right.
different patterns, permutations. But it probably is. And this is another interesting side effect, that what you said earlier, that keeping people engaged is actually a good thing. It's just that I would also
Mhm.
say to people, you gotta learn to, if you watch, but stay relaxed. Stay relaxed, because if you get tense about it, then, well, for one thing, it doesn't feel good. But I don't
Right.
think it's helpful to you or to the overall picture to get tense and worried and fearful. If you watch, the carnage, stay relaxed through it. So, right.
Yeah, it can feel like that. It can feel like it's everywhere, but you just have to keep reminding yourself we are the majority. We are the majority.
Yes.
Most people are just normal people that just want to get along, go to work, have a family, be safe, the basic things. That's most people. So yeah, we're the majority.
Yeah.
So
That's how
yeah.
that's it. That's exactly it. All right. I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.